conspiracy theory that the January 6th insurrection by the FBI. Gates added they would focus on that rather than on working with Democrats to pass legislation.
We are going to take this next election, and when we do, it's going to be the days of Jim Jordan and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Dr. Gosar and myself doing everything to get the answers to these questions.
Can you expound a little bit on what the days of Jim Jordan and Marjorie Taylor Greene are going to look like?
Yeah, we're going to send subpoenas. We're going to conduct real oversight. We're going to show up in person and get answers. The notion that Republicans are going to take control of the House and we're going to hold hands in the warm spring rain with the Democrats and legislate is ludicrous.
All right, no one thinks you're going to legislate, but what was that about holding hands in the warm spring rain? Is that a four-season?
Good night. See you tomorrow.
Company of Jersey Boys, because that would explain the hair. Oh, what a night! We held hands in the warm spring rain. Then she laughed because I was insane. 'Cause I remember what a night. Wow, without a warm-up. That was the warm-up. Our hair is pretty close. I'm just realizing. I made the mistake of looking at the key, and I'm like, glass houses, as they say. I knew that was somehow not the craziest part of the press conference, because Gates also floated an insane idea that has been gaining traction on the right, that if Republicans win back the House in 2022, they might try to make Donald Trump Speaker, which is possible, because technically, the Speaker of the House does not have to be a member of Congress. Several Republicans, including Trump's former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, and now Gates, have floated the possibility, and Gates said he can run the idea by Trump himself.
If you do leave with the House, do you want ex-President Trump Speaker?
I would.
Hill here. We found a facility where AIM is preparing to spin up another fake arc reactor. We all know how well that went last time. We have to put a stop to it.
Trump cut him off. We want you to be Speaker of the House.
The arc reactor's nearby. Jarvis, are you picking up anything?
Locked on and ready, Commander.
Good luck out there.
That's why I call her the reverse Melania. Not hearing much from Melania. Alexa, why isn't Melania talking to me?
An elite AIM team.
Because she hates you.
Now, the point is, these people's depravity truly knows no bounds. Trump let a deadly pandemic ravage the country.
Welcome to part 14 of my playthrough of Avengers on PS5. Hopefully you've been enjoying watching me play the game so far. If you have, as always, like, comment, subscribe. Without further ado, let's get back to it. He personally came into contact with more than 500 people after testing positive for COVID and hiding it. And yet, the sycophants of the Trump cult are still willing to do anything to get...
welcome back. Thank you guys so much for coming over.
We are not alone.
Welcome on in, and thank y'all for helping me keep great music alive. As always.
Another foe vanquished.
A house is not a home. The song that I'm going to play, I'm going to check out this live version. So here we are. Hopefully everything goes in this video, man. I am super excited. This song right here, this brother be singing, man. So just to hear him live, here we go. Hey, we ain't gonna waste no more time. I'm gonna try to pause, not to pause it too much. Man, but the brother's right. Man, you know, when you know you got it, you can do it. You got the point. And then, again, live, man.
Require assistance.
Are you gonna leave? Say that you're gonna That might have been one of the greatest live performances. I mean, his brother was just standing in there. Just standing there. He was the only one on stage, him, the mic, and the curtain, damn it.
coach a team that's getting better and more comfortable, and in particular, Russell Westbrook looks like he's getting much more comfortable in his role.
Russell is getting more comfortable, and that's driving to the bucket, kicking it off to people for layups and dunks. And they won against the Celtics in particular, how they should win, and that's points in the paint. But I agree with you. The Golden State Warriors and the Phoenix Suns are superior to the Los Angeles Lakers. They're not where they should be because they've had the fourth easiest schedule, and they're hovering around 500. We know at some point, not rooting for injury, that LeBron at this point of his career and AD still will miss more games this season, which puts you in position to be lower than 4. And if they're lower than 4, they're definitely not
Well,
winning.
a couple of things. Number one, I'm just recovering from the footage of Miami. It looks so beautiful there, and I'm wondering why the hell ESPN got us at the Barclays Center, the Garden, going to Philadelphia this weekend, but never thinks to send us to South Beach. That's just a question. We'll deal with that another day. Here's the deal.
You gotta make it happen.
Here's the deal. We've got the Warriors, we've got the Suns. Are the Lakers in the right position? Hell no. And I'm going to tell you why. If the playoffs were to begin today, they got the Utah Jazz. You think they beat the Utah Jazz? I don't think they beat the Utah Jazz. Excuse me, if you're a 4 seed or a 5th seed, you might luck up and get Memphis, but what if you get the Clippers instead? Remember, by that time, Kawhi Leonard is expected to return. Clippers already beat you without Kawhi Leonard. I'm not looking at the Lakers and automatically thinking they're going to take out the Clippers. We have to acknowledge and admit that right now, the Lakers are closer to getting bounced out in the first round than they are even get to the conference finals, let alone a berth in the finals, because that's how suspect they've looked. Now, Russell Westbrook, I watched him last night, sensational defense at intervals of the game. Got to give mad love and credit. But they were playing a Boston Celtics team without Jaylen Brown. Are we just going to forget that Jaylen Brown was in street clothes? That Jason Tatum was out there basically by himself offensively? I'm not forgetting that. So I'm not getting caught up in what I've seen as of yet. I want to see a little bit more consistency. I want to see a little more aggression. I want to see a little more urgency. And I want my brother Charles Barkley, nothing but love for you, my brother, from all of us, talking about Frank Vogel as being victimized. Frank Vogel is a champion as a coach that religiously coached one of the top defenses in the NBA. That's his signature. The Los Angeles Lakers are the 29th ranked defense right now.
No.
Him too.
No. We ain't putting this on Frank Vogel.
All of them.
No. They got a ball.
Stephen,
They ain't putting this on the
They're Hall of Famers. They got 7 Hall of Famers on the roster. What does he do?
Frank Vogel.
Was he doing bacon cookies? Was he doing bacon cookies as a coach? Figure it out.
Stephen A. has the remarkable ability to say something that makes everyone yell right when I'm being told go to break.
That's like putting a high score up on a video game that nobody's going to take down. It's almost like Stockton's assist record. But I thought this when the Big O had the triple-double record. And then Russell Westbrook came along. And I would say Steph is going to put up the score that nobody's going to take down. But if somebody is, Trae Young is going to be the guy. Because he's 23, he's played like 4 years, he shoots with unlimited range, and he's already a guy that's averaging 25 and double-figure assists for whatever it's worth. But Steph is going to put up a...
Steph Curry's record is going to be broken by anyone currently playing in the NBA.
I don't know if it's going to be done by anyone currently playing the game, and I certainly don't believe it's going to be Trae Young, believe it or not, because I think that when you see Trae Young operate off the dribble, it's usually a floater in the lane or something along those lines, as opposed to shooting a 3 off the dribble, even though we know he's capable of doing it. So I would disagree with Jalen there. What I will say, however, is that keep this in mind. Steph Curry is a transcendent figure in the game of basketball. He's got little kids out there launching jump shots now in the park at a very, very young age. He's 6'3". He's not 6'8" or 6'9", 260 pounds. He's not a 7'1" dude. He's not a physical freak of nature. He's a normal-looking dude.
He's not going to be in the way to play the game. Gretzky not getting threes. His volume making not...
He comes back from injury, and just how significant that might be going forward.
Greeny, I was told that late last week the Bucks feared that Giannis Antetokounmpo could need to...
Hey, referencing the early part of the documentary, how many more people do you think need to be dead before the real story of why the funky dojo ended comes out?
I think it's about time right now. They got fed up with Marty, Dory's wife. But anyway, that's it. Hold on, I got another email. Somewhere. You print them out? Yes. Well, how am I going to keep them otherwise? These things, some of them are 3 months old. if I see something that might be remotely interesting, and apparently my judgment on those is way off, then I print it out and I put it in a stack so that I can refer to them when I need to.
Doesn't sound like good cards.
No, this is not like the Cult of Warnet membership certificates. This is not cardstock at all. This is copy paper. I'm not framing these things. They're not going to be held down for posterity. They're barely going to be read on this fucking thing.
Maybe there's something worth framing in the information.
Well, I doubt it very seriously. I think we're probably going to go downhill from here. If folks interested. Chris writes, the flashbang story was hilarious. The mention that you have a best running and strange love gun is something I'm still laughing at. By the way, it's recently on sale from the not only James, not only George Clinton, not only Bootsy Collins, but it's James Brown. It can't get any better. It's Tales from the Tour Bus. But anyway, as a result of not hearing that song for 30 years, I want to be on my way back. Okay. It does not make sense. But that's not what I'm writing. My question is, what if Flash Punk had said no to the idea presented to him? What if he said, no, dancing girls and funky music is stupid, I don't want to do that? Did the wrestlers have the option to refuse a gimmick presented to them? If so, can you give a few examples? Or, if a gimmick was shot down by one guy, did they present it to another guy who agreed? Yeah. The what-if stories would be interesting. Opportunity to turn a gimmick down in wrestling until the mid to late 80s. Because usually you said what your gimmick was. If Jim Dalton wanted to be a fucking cowboy, then he sent pictures to the promoters that he wanted to get booked by of him wearing a cowboy outfit. If they booked him, they expected a cowboy to show up. And it was that fucking simple. You sent pictures based on what you looked like, and people booked you and expected that to show up. Now, every once in a while, you couldn't get booked like what you wanted to be or what you were. So, for example, when Sugar Bear Harris came to Memphis, and Jerry Jarrett didn't have a spot for him, but boy, the more he looked at him and the reports that he got were that he looked like somebody that never wrestled a day in his life because Sugar Bear was not a technician. But he was 6'6", 350 pounds, and he became Kamala, the Ugandan giant. And they shot the video in Jerry Jarrett's backyard in Hendersonville, and he went everywhere and made huge fucking money for years. Based on being a Ugandan giant that couldn't really fucking wrestle. So your gimmick could be changed, but yes, the promoter would say, hey, what about this? And if you really didn't want to do it, you didn't want the job, you'd say, no, fuck, I ain't going to do that. That's happened 100 million times. With the advent of contracts, as we just talked about, it started getting more difficult because now there's an actual written contract that says not only are these good people going to pay you such and such for whatever, but you got to do such and such, and that ruined wrestling in a lot of ways to me. But that's another one because now there's more. And especially by the time, if guys get to the WWF, they want to be one of the ones that hit the lottery rather than the gobbledygookers, right? Ted DiBiase, Vince wouldn't tell him the $1 Million Man gimmick until he agreed to come. He just said, trust me and I'll make you more money than you've ever made in your life, and he did. Because it was a great gimmick that DiBiase could carry on. But when it's not, then that pretty much buries your fucking ass as... Look no further than the Red Rooster. Terry Taylor was never taken seriously again when he was a hell of a fucking worker and had a lot of upside and could have gone further. So yes, you still always can say no, but especially now where everything is controlled and contrived, it's taking your fucking job in your hands if you do. I remember Elijah Burke when they came up with the Spirit Squad. Elijah Burke poked D'Angelo De Niro. Not that that was any better. Well, it has to be. Everything's better than Spirit Squad. But he was supposed to be one of them, and he didn't want to do it. And he even asked Dusty, and Dusty said, because one way or another, he said, no, I don't want to be in this. I can't do this. I can't be a male cheerleader. The guy's fucking former firefighter and a goddamn hell of a fucking prospect, and they want to kill his career too, like they did poor Jeter and everybody except Dolph Ziggler who had to change his name. He said no, and they still used him for a while, but I'm sure it lingers. But you know, but it's like anything else. If you know Mick Foley, Cactus Jack was tremendous at this. When he was in WCW twice, and he saw that they weren't using him, didn't know how to use him, the current administration didn't want to use him, he was smart enough to say, short term, I'm going to quit on this $150,000 a year contract so that I am not exposed in a bad light on national television and my career is shortened by that. I'm going to go out and do my own thing until somebody else smartens up and wants to treat me right. And he did, and they did. And he avoided a couple of times where he could have been, you know, just beat to powder. So, but you have to be willing to, you know, when you say, no, I ain't going to do it, you have to be willing to not do anything at all rather than do that. When Ole wanted to put the pumpkin on my head at Halloween Havoc, that pumpkin wasn't going on my head. I was going home before that pumpkin went on my head. The pumpkin didn't go on my head. Then I still went home 3 or 4 days later anyway because I just said, fuck it. But yeah, you know, and that's why sometimes with some guys, I'm sorry, but if you think, if you're any good at all, and you tell somebody, whoever it is, no, I ain't gonna do that, that's fucking stupid. I just need to go somewhere else apparently, because if that's the best thing that y'all can come up with for me, I'm not very important around here, and I don't want to do that, and it ain't gonna matter if I do, because it ain't gonna work. So I'll just go somewhere else and get over, hopefully, and you guys can continue with your business, and later on when I'm over, you'll probably want to bring me back. Because later on, if you do get over, they will want to bring you back. But if you sit around like a old whore the night before the fucking prom, waiting for the phone to ring, and do nothing else, and you always say yes regardless of what the fuck or how stupid it is, then you ain't gonna fucking get a chance to get over.
But could a guy say no to Vince and not having killed his career in the WWE? Can Shane Douglas have said, Vince, I know you're trying to tell me to believe in this. I don't think there's any way in the world that the idea that I'm a teacher, an evil teacher, will get over. We'll try something else. Would that have ever worked?
I think he actually did say that too. But at the same time, the thing is, a lot of people have said no to Vince at first, but then they're talked into it because Vince has a bizarre way of talking people into shit they don't want to do. But if he had said that and stuck to it, they probably would have used him in another way, and Vince would have been down on him, and so it probably was something the other way would have not been too good either. And then slowly but surely the same thing would have happened, but at least he wouldn't have had to be fucking Dean Douglas. You know, I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, you gotta have some fucking standards.
Well, obviously, Vince McMahon doesn't, so that makes it a little difficult.
Well, you know, and I've been around him. When he sees some of these things, the way he sees them, he genuinely thinks that they will work, or they can be great, or they can get over, or whatever. Fucking goddamn poor Mike Shaw. Fucking saying Mike Shaw got booked. He was doomed. Mike Shaw got booked in WCW because he had been mucking sing in Calgary. And of course, if you think Mike Shaw mucking sing, he doesn't sound like that nationality. That was the whole idea. Apparently, they got a bunch of Hindu folks or whatever that whole deal was up there in the Alberta area. And he was doing a takeoff where he was obviously a white guy from wherever, but he was being mucking sing, and he had an army, and he was doing these great promos. And they got heat as heels, and it worked, and all of the tape traders back in it, the same ones watching Owen Hart, 87, 88, 89, they loved this fucking Calgary wrestling, and they loved muck and sing. And among them was Joe Pedicino, and some of the people that got goddamn pulled with Jim Herd and TBS. So that's how Mike Shaw came to be brought into WCW, but somehow, since Herd was an idiot and everybody else involved just hated his fucking guts and probably wanted him to fucking die, they brought Mike Shaw in as Norman the Lunatic, not fucking saying, because I guess there wasn't a lot of fucking Hindus in Atlanta, but he was supposed to be an escaped mental patient, heel, Norman the Lunatic. So they took away the fucking promos, the shit that got him over, because he was a witty guy. Said he looked like a big hairy fat sloppy fuck. And at first, Vince wanted to make him a Friar Ferguson, who was a demented monk, with the robes and the staff. And then that didn't fucking fly for whatever reason.
Well, he was drunk too. I believe he would be drinking before and after the match, and they alluded to the fact that they don't know what exactly he was drinking at his couch.
Well, yeah, because he has like the wine in a bag thing, the old slow carry around. Yeah, but now Vince's toilet humor and goddamn dark side takes over, and they come up because you can just see Vince saying, because there's Vince, the bodybuilding fanatic, and he wants Luger, and he wants the Ultimate Warrior, and there's fucking Mike Shaw, and he's grotesque by this point, obese. Gotta be 400 pounds. Fast chip and they put him in the goddamn most obscene, skimpy outfit that accentuates all the folds and his feet flaps and his fucking, wrinkles and everything, and have him eat slop and throw up and digest slop and whatever the fuck, and his music was farting noises. And that was pretty much my career in the United States of America. So because he was so captivating to all the smart fans in WCW that were in the office, he proceeded to undergo 6 to 7 years of the worst booking that anybody was ever subjected to in their life, and then went away.
I think Norman the Lunatic is probably the highlight of this.
Sad to say, and I believe it was. I believe it was. So that's one of those things.
Bastion Booker, there's no way that can get over. Like, that's the thing. We're like, oh, Vince. Like, how did Vince look at that and say, this will work? People want this guy, people care about this guy. It's such a stupid idea. It's a stupid idea.
Yeah, he loved that shit. He loved shit like that. And he could laugh out of it. And the thing is, he knew this guy wasn't going to main event WrestleMania, but Vince's thing always was, put these gimmicks on the card because you got something for everybody and it's entertainment and whatever. No, to me, what stuff like that has done, unless you do it right with the periphery, with the managers or the referees, the valets or whatever, little gaga over there. But when you just do stupid things with the wrestlers on the card, A, you take a piece of talent that you might could have got something out of, and you make sure you couldn't. And B, you make everybody up and down the card look silly and stupid and foolish just by being involved with that. I.e. with the goddamn Impact Wrestling showing the fat, unprofessional fuck doing slow motion wrestling. Everybody on your card, whether they're talented or not, becomes tainted by the stench of their fucking hokiness and unprofessionalism. And that's, to me, so I never... Bob Clark, who was a guy who worked in the office up in Stanford, now I described with him, he was just an office guy and nobody gave a fuck about him, so I would get down in his back seat and cover myself up, and he'd drive into the garden and drop me off so people wouldn't beat his car up or beat me up. He was a nice guy. But when he got into talent relations around about 99, 2000, he started overseeing instead of being in a long-time office and studio. He knew something about wrestling.
Noise
over, great. If not, then at least I haven't embarrassed anybody. I'm making him wear ballet fucking slippers.
Heyman's good at that too. You know, with all his faults and finding weaknesses, and hiding it, even if it means editing Barbie 42 match off the show. But hiding it is really accentuating every positive thing, every positive thing.
He was the best in the 90s at it. I couldn't get smoking out. I had experience with so I didn't have to hide a lot with those guys.
One of their agents is down.
Just, you know, where the shit's anywhere else. And then I think in the 2000s, I was probably better than anybody because by then Heyman was closed down and working for Vince. Obviously, the guys over for OPW, and they had no idea what they were doing.
Another agent down.
So that they could be comfortable.
The team are no longer a threat. All I do is, we'll need to take control of their systems. Get me to the location on your HUD.
Starting in 1982, if Fritz von Erich, Jim Crockett had a vision of everything that happened in the wrestling industry for the rest of the 80s, and the power to change only one event in their respective promotions' destinies during that time, what do you think those decisions might be, and could anything be done to curtail the WWF's eventual strangulation of their business?
Good Lord, that was a wordy, but okay, so who are the principals again? We have Fritz, we have Crockett.
And we have Vern Gagne, so the three biggest non...
Should we get to our main event story today? Because this is so... It'll cheer me up. That's why I saved it for last, folks, because I needed to be cheered up after the chaos of the political and geopolitical strata over the weekend. Vince Russo has sued himself off again. I guess this was a video from his podcast, right?
Apparently that was the last podcast, and they do, I guess, a video version of it so you can actually see the people talking.
Because I saw much of it. I couldn't take listening to that fucking voice or looking at that goddamn brown puckered sphincter of a fucking face. It was like 17 minutes that it was, so I watched some of it, and then I was going to go back to it by the time it had been taken down, because he'd realized what he'd done. But basically, for folks who don't know, Vince Russo, on his podcast, with that, and this going further, this is harmless, and as long as he never actually was given a booking job somewhere and allowed to do the things that he comes up with for that wrestling whatever. Basically, he got a job this past New York, and Russo likes to have his own kind of wrestling. This goes tomfoolery, amuses him, and they hired him as an agent. And none of the boys fucking respect him, and they used to fuck with him on the first. He was there, like Gina, in the Tarzan movie. and he was basically trying to suck somebody's dick for a job. And probably the job he's going to end up with shortly after he himself. And then he did the same thing to Pop TV. He did the same thing to
Okay, I think that was all for the time being.
They got hold of him and said, hey, you've been sold a bill of goods. This program's crummy. I'm the only one who can fix it. You need to hire me as a consultant, so I'll help you out. They can basically tell the networks that are carrying TNA, if you can call Pop TV a network at this point, but trying to tell the platforms that TNA has left available to them to stay on the air that this program's a shit, so nobody's going to watch it. You've been sold a bill of goods. That was a quote. You've been sold a bill of goods. And the only way to fix it is if you hire me, not thinking that they may just say, well, fuck, now that this guy's told us we just got conned by this fucking lying Dixie as much as these other wrestling carnies, why don't we just cancel the whole thing and everybody'd be out of a job? He didn't care about that. All he wanted to do was go behind somebody's back and get a job. And I hate to say, Brian, you know how bad I hate to say I told you so.
You do?
Every time I say I told you so, I preface it by saying I hate to say this, so you know it's true. But people, I told you so! Fucking lying, backstabbing, nut-cutting, chalk-sniffing, conniving motherfucker that doesn't give a fuck about anybody but himself, much like Donald Trump. Because in his little fucking pea brain, in that dehydrated BB that he calls a functioning fucking brain, Vince Russo still thinks, despite all evidence to the contrary, he still thinks that he knows the first fucking thing, that he can spell cat if you spot him the C and the A as it comes to professional wrestling. He had a momentary bit of success due to as much as a billionaire's fucking desperation and complete accident, and also tripping over the two biggest stars in the modern history of the business. And he has traded on that for 20 years by lying, by conniving, by going behind people's backs, and we're gonna sketch that whole thing out for you, as a matter of fact. Because it first manifested itself when he went down there and was fighting with after he gave notice to Vince McMahon by calling him on the phone when Vince had just landed from a European tour and was at the Meadowlands, despite the fact that was 30 miles from where Vince Russo lived. He could immediately hop in his car, and in an hour he could have been standing looking Vince McMahon in the face and saying, I'm better off for WCW. Here's my hand, Vince. Thank you for getting me started in the business, and I'll do everything to you, because he did. He's running a fucking second-hand goddamn video store. That was the kind of stand-up guy he was. He goes down to Turner Broadcasting, where he sold them a bill of goods, just like Bischoff did, to fucking get the job that he had at that time. Incompetent that guy must have been. And they sent him home, and then he came back and tried to work with Bischoff, and then he went home again, and then he said he had a concussion, and he took his ball and went home because he was in the ring. This fucking buggy-whipped arm, bug-eyed, non-athletic fuck was in the ring trying to, on a national television show, trying to play wrestler and doing it badly. Out of the 2 or 2.5 years that he spent in WCW until they sent him home for the final time and closed down shortly thereafter, he closed down a fucking billionaire's wrestling company. He wasn't in charge half of the time, and he blamed standards and practices, and he blamed this guy, and he blamed that guy, and only if they'd seen my true vision, and only if they'd seen my true brilliance, right? So that was his fucking success in WCW. And then after WCW goes out of business and is sold to Vince McMahon after losing $60 million in the last year of their existence and sold to Vince McMahon for basically pennies on the dollar. Where does Vince Russo end up? Jerry Jarrett starts a company with his son out of Nashville, had original investors. The investors at the time looked good, but unfortunately they got in some problems with their own business. It was hell south. Everybody's heard that story. But Jeff Jarrett, unfortunately, the one mistake that the Jarrett family made, or Jeff at least, was trusting this fucking conniving shit. And he's the one, Vince Russo's the one, everybody knows this story is true, that named TNA Wrestling. And Jerry Jarrett, he lied to Jerry Jarrett and said, oh, it's total nonstop action. And Jerry was not sold on the fucking name, but of course Russo admitted later on, I just told him that because he would have never gone for it. It was really TNA, because in his fucking adolescent, never fucked another fucking female but his childhood sweetheart who he's still married to, fucking arrested sexual fucking life. That was a fucking funny thing. Oh, let's make it TNA Wrestling. That'll get all the fucking people that watch the Jerry Springer Show, like me and my fucking opera, the Jerry Springer Show. All wrestling fans want to see is trash. We want to appeal to the lowest common denominator. So he named a company TNA Wrestling. And believe me, it wasn't lost on people outside the wrestling bubble. I remember when I promoted one of their first live events here in Louisville, Kentucky, I had to go to the cable company. And I had to go to the television companies. I had to go to the radio stations and say, yes, I'm working for, and I would say it very slowly, TNA Wrestling. But still, they go, oh, TNA Wrestling? And roll their fucking eyes. So this fucking little adolescent fucking jock-sniffing wannabe fucking wrestler who thought he was a goddamn genius doomed them with a bad name that people wouldn't take seriously. The creative was suspect for the first couple of years when they got sideways with Hell South because they had their legal issues and couldn't put any more money in it. They found Dixie Carter. They found an angel, as my old friend Burt Prentice would say. And he went right to work on Dixie Carter. Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. Oh, I'm the greatest. Oh, it's just that everybody else there's a problem. Everybody else, they're holding me back. Everybody else. And they fired him once. They let him go, fired him. I don't know what the fuck. I wasn't there then. The reason why I went to TNA originally was because I thought it was a Russo free zone because they'd already made that experiment and saw that it didn't work. And he had midgets beaten off in garbage cans and dancers in cages. Vince Russo was responsible for Jeff and Jerry Jarrett not speaking to each other for years because of the ill feelings, because of Vince Russo being involved in that when Jerry Jarrett was trying to start a wrestling company, and his quote in one of his books was reading a television format written by Vince Russo was like reading something written by a man on LSD. And Jeff, unfortunately, and we'll talk about this, folks, he came to find out, but he didn't know then Russo's true colors. So as a result of Jeff still trying to follow the sports entertainment thing that Russo wanted to put together, Jerry and Jeff didn't speak for years. He tore a family apart because of his backstabbing and whispering in people's ears and telling people things behind other people's backs. So he did that, but he was in Dixie Carter's ear. And then he was gone, but then he was always in her ear, because then, see, here's the thing, this fucking guy, even though he says he graduated fucking college, and by the way, Russo, I know you're going to listen to this, because you listen to everything that everybody says about you. You blocked me on Twitter. I don't have your fucking phone number, but I just want you to know, when you listen to this motherfucker, you know I'm telling the God's honest truth. Your God, the one you believe in, I don't, but I'm not a liar like you are. I don't suck up to people to get a job. If they don't want to fucking hire me on my merits, they can go piss up a rope. So I'm telling the truth because I got nothing to lose. If you got anything to say to me, you call me. You know people that have my fucking number, you piece of shit. So, here's what happened next. I think it's a Russo Carter's here because he knows nothing else. He can't do anything else. He went to college over in Evansville, Indiana for journalism. He can't fucking spell, and he was a goddamn embarrassment when he used to read the TV format in the TNA media. fired a couple people off the creative team. I think Scott Demore was one. Maybe somebody else, I can't remember. We hired somebody new. And I was dumbfounded. What the fuck can you explain? And I will say to Dutch Mantel's credit, he's one of the funniest and the smartest men I've ever met in professional wrestling. And for 3 years on a weekly basis, I would ask him, why is this motherfucker here? Why is his presence tolerated? Why is anybody listening to him? He could never give me a fucking answer. Because he didn't know either. But so I tried to give my notice because I didn't want to be, I knew it was going to be a situation. I didn't want to be a detriment to business. I said, hey, when you guys smarten up and fucking fire him, then call me back. Let Abyss give me the black hole slam. Jeff wouldn't accept my notice. He said, no, you don't come, you're not showing up. We're not going to take it. We're not going to take your resignation. You don't have to deal with Russo. Dutch is your producer. You go on, blah, blah, blah. So there's a little email. And I said, fine. I said, I tried to give my notice. I don't want it to get in the way of business. You know how I feel about this guy, but I will do my best for you, Jeff. If you want me to be here, I will do my best for you. I will perform my best. I will do my best for the company. As a matter of fact, it was 3 months later, 4 months later, Jeff asked me to be not only an on-air talent as commissioner, but also an agent to help work in the TV truck and tell like Keith Mitchell, the producer, and Dave Sahadi or Timmy Walworth, the directors, what was going on so they didn't miss any shots, especially on the live pay-per-views. And lay out matches for the guys, especially the ex-WWF talent that might want to work with someone that had a little bit more experience than a few of the other agents that they had. And I accepted that job because I wanted to help the company. And I never had any fucking confrontations with Russo. I didn't speak to him for the first 3 months. I didn't have any confrontations with him. I didn't cause any problems. I said, okay, I will help do what I can for the company. What did Vince Russo do? What did he think in his mind? There was a lawsuit that Conan brought against TNA Wrestling, and one of the emails that was discovery in that lawsuit was pertaining to me. And Brian, I sent it to you because I wanted you to see it. Instead of me just reading this shit and everybody thinks it's me, you can vouch for the fact that this is a legitimate email that was found in discovery in the lawsuit that was sent by Vince Russo to Dixie Carter. Can you not?
I can verify that's exactly what it is.
Can you read that email now?
I can. I believe this came up because David Nixon-Span, my partner on 605, was doing an article about this and uncovered this. It's about Conan's discrimination lawsuit against TNA. I believe in that lawsuit he also accused Terry Taylor of causing his kidney failure by giving him pills. But anyway, here is the letter. I'll read it verbatim as best as I can. It is from October 12, 2006.
About 3 or 5, I would say, no, it's about a month after they hired Russo back.
Dixie, there are 2 things I want to pass along to you regarding a conversation I had this morning. A good friend of mine that I worked with at the WWF for 4 years, called me today. His name is Matt Miller, and he now runs the Gund Arena in Cleveland. Matt told me that a couple of weeks ago he caught part of our show after watching the UFC. He said that he felt we were sending out mixed messages, that the pieces didn't seem to fit. He said on one hand he saw Conan's group, LAX, that came across as cool, hip, and cutting edge. And moments later, he saw Jim Cornette on the same show that came across as a southern 1980s wrestling cartoon. Dixie, these were his exact words. I agree wholeheartedly with this and tried to tiptoe around it with Jeff, and he got defensive and mad at me. Right now, in Samoa Joe and Kurt, we have 2 wrestlers about as real as can be, the closest to UFC that you're going to get. Then on the other hand, we have your Cornettes and your Jeffs, to some extent.
Yeah, to some extent in parentheses.
Yeah, that are about as old school wrestling as you get. It seems that in 42 minutes, we have 2 different brands, 2 different types of entertainment. My thing with Cornette isn't personal. I swear to you. And that's in caps, that's why I said swear like that.
Yeah.
But I'm just having a huge problem with him representing TNA management. Wearing a canary yellow sports jacket when we go into prime time. Again, Dixie, being hip
is the key. The show is cool. Angle is cool. LAX, you have guys like Truth and Holt, and then we shot ourselves in the foot when we go back 20 years. Again, I just wanted to make note of this. To be honest, if I was writing TV, a character like Jim Cornette would not be representing TNA management. I would rather go with an attractive, sexy female executive like a Tina Fey that would add a whole new dimension to the product. Just my 2 cents. Business. Matt also told me that the owners of the Cleveland Cavaliers own a company called Fatheads. What they make is huge decals of athletes that you can stick on your wall. They tried to strike a deal with the WWF and were turned down. This might be worth our while to go after, as I think it would be a good thing to get our licensing department on. If they want any more info, they can call me. I hope you're having a good day. Peace. Vince.
Number 1. Matt Miller. I know Matt Miller very well. Matt Miller was a friend of mine, also worked with him at the same time in the WWF, and he was a very nice guy, and he never seemed to have a problem with me, and I don't know whether Matt Miller said that or whether Vince just needed to come up with somebody else that said these things so he could agree with them rather than it coming from him, since obviously he had nothing personal against me. But you see, he started a month after they hired him back. Jeff Jarrett at that time was still a minority owner of TNA, and he is going to Dixie, telling Dixie that Jeff, the only reason that he got involved, that Russo got involved with the company to begin with, Jeff Jarrett, was Southern wrestling, and then he tried to walk it back a little bit by saying to some extent, he tried to walk it back, but me, he wasn't going to walk back. By the way, do you remember ever seeing me wearing a canary yellow suit in TNA?
I don't actually.
No, because I didn't. Because here, Fuckwad wasn't even paying attention to what was going on his own show, on the show that the company he was working for. Dutch Mantell is the one who decided that I was going to be, actually he wanted to call me the wrestling czar, but I was either, I can't remember whether I was director of authority or voice of management or whatever the fuck. It was the old commissioner thing, the old commissioner ploy. But I was wearing double-breasted suits that matched and was the only one in the whole company, and maybe the only one in the whole business with the verbal ability, as was tested and proven many times, as Dutch and Jeff would actually come to me and say, you gotta explain this. You're the only one's gonna be able to get these rules out or these stipulations or explain what the fuck. I was racking my brain trying to go out there and explain the foolishness and the nonsense and the verbal effluvia that Vince Russo was writing that nobody would understand, and I had to go out and make sense out of it, and I was dressed, I thought, quite well. I looked to myself when I looked in the mirror like a paragon of sartorial resplendency. I bought nice suits, everything matched. I wasn't carrying a tennis racket. I was the voice of the promotion. And unfortunately, the voice of the promotion is the one that had to explain the bullshit that Vince Russo was foisting off on the viewers. Then, he would, instead of me doing that, can you name Tina Fey, by the way, was not available. Not for those wages, at least. Can you imagine a woman that was going to be able to explain any of that horse shit? Can you imagine I, at one point, not only had to explain all the horse shit that he was writing, but also, there was at one point, I know some of the 3 or 4 TNA fans might remember, that the production crew was ready to riot because he came into the production meeting wanting to have a brawl involving 32 members of the roster fighting simultaneously in 3 different places, inside the impact zone, in the locker room area, and out in catering, and wanted it shot live to tape. And I was the one they came to and was able to produce that because I spent 4 hours that afternoon placing everybody, placing the furniture, placing the toys, and walking everybody through it, not only from the wrestling side, but also from the camera side. I gave the best effort that I could give to try to mitigate the damage that he was doing to that lying cunt Dixie Carter's fucking company by trying to at least bring it back up to even, because I figured if I do the best I can, then maybe, just maybe, I can mitigate the damage he's doing and we can at least break even on the thing. Of course, I was overestimating my fucking capabilities because I wasn't even that good. But already a month after that they hired him back, he was sending emails like that, knocking me personally, knocking Jeff behind his back. I remember another time that Dutch Mantell mentioned that he was at Jeff's house and he and Vince and Jeff were writing the show. And Dutch was out of the room, and this was right after he'd come back, and he couldn't hear exactly what was going on, but he heard a few little choice things because Russo was whining and griping and squealing like a pig under a gate that I hated him, and he didn't know what was going to happen, and I told him in the past I was going to punch him in the face, and Jeff Jarrett's words loud and clear rang out, "God damn it, Vince. If you're so fucking worried about it, why don't you go ahead and have the fight with him and be a man and see what happens?" And he wouldn't fucking do it because he's a gutless prick. He's a gutless, backstabbing prick. So what did he do then? He waited 3 years. He waited until Jeff got sideways with Dixie, and Dixie sent Jeff home and removed him from power. And then he saw his chance to whisper in the ear of that delicate little southern flower that had wasted about $50 million at that point of her father's money. And he systematically got everybody that Jeff had brought in to run the wrestling side of the equation except himself out. First, Savio Vega was fired as an agent. Then Road Dogg, Brian Armstrong, Brian James was fired as an agent. Then finally Dutch Mantell, who not only had 40 years experience in professional wrestling, but had more talent for wrestling in his little finger than Vince Russo has ever had in his giant, bloated fucking body with that basketball-sized head on top of that fucking pea-sized fucking neck. But also, Dutch Mantell is the one, as Vince Russo said, we have Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle that are real as real can be. That's the UFC. Vince Russo never watched a bit of the UFC. Russo plays fantasy baseball like he lives in a fantasy world. It was Dutch Mantell, the one that wrote the TVs that was the lead up to the biggest pay-per-view that they ever did, which was Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle in that semi-shoot fight. It was Dutch Mantell that made the decision that they wouldn't do angles every week, that they would just train and talk about each other, so people would have to pay to see them touch, and as a result, TNA Wrestling did 40-some thousand pay-per-view buys for that pay-per-view, the most they'd ever done, and they never approached it again because Russo saw that success and figured, oh shit, I didn't have anything to do with this, so I better start booking these fucking guys, because elsewise if they do it again and I don't have anything to do with it, even Dixie, as stupid as she is, will see through it. So that's when he took over fucking taking care of them, and as a result they never achieved that success again because all he did was his phony angles every week. When the knockouts became the highest rated segment of the show, it had been girl wrestling that Vince Russo didn't want anything to do with, so Dutch Mantell, building around Gail Kim, a classic Ricky Morton babyface, and Awesome Kong, a classic Abdullah the Butcher style heel, built the knockouts division into where it was doing better ratings than the men that Russo was writing, so then Russo takes over with the beautiful people and blah 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 and gimmicked the knockouts up and just made them part of the roster again, and they lost their success. And then finally when Jeff was sent home, and then he got rid of Savio, and he got rid of Road Dogg, and then finally he got rid of Dutch, then I was the last one to go. Because allegedly I had blown up at Vince Russo in a production meeting. Now let me tell you folks something, and I'm pretty sure you know when I'm telling the truth. If I had screamed and yelled at Vince Russo and cussed him out, don't you think I would be saying that? Don't you think I would be broadcasting that from the highest rooftop in the land? What happened was, he booked a stupid match between Sting and supposed to be Super Mech, supposed to be Dixie's Latino superstar, both of them baby faces. Sting 20 years older and a fucking 60 pounds lighter. And Sting was supposed to have broken ribs from a previous attack on the show. And then they were going to have this match with each other on TV, and a bunch of people were going to run in. They were going to fight them off together, and then Sting was going to roll Hernandez up from behind and beat him. So the 50-year-old man with the broken ribs was going to beat the Latino superstar that everybody knows you don't beat the Latino superstars because their people lose faith in them, and besides that, it was preposterous. And besides that, it would turn the Sting heel. And then he was going to have Eric Young come down and lay both of them out with a baseball bat and stand there and cut a promo over them, even though neither Eric Young nor most of the people that were going to run in were even on the next pay-per-view, but Sting and Hernandez were both on the next pay-per-view in very prominent matches. And in the production meeting, privately, I said, what the fuck? Because because the one time since 1999 that Vince Russo has called me on the phone, he had called me on my way down to Florida, and he had told me that this match he had was going to take place like that, and I said, Vince, that's insane for all the reasons I just mentioned. You can't do that. It'll bury everybody. Let them fight the opposing forces off together and do a DQ and get out of it. A DQ may not be preferable, but we're in it now because you shouldn't have the match to begin with. And he said, okay, you're right. And as soon as we got to the production meeting, he had changed that back to the original thing. So with Terry Taylor there, and with Taz there, and with Mike Tenay there, and with everybody else that was in the office at the time, we argued it out, and I prevailed because my way made sense and didn't destroy the careers of their top stars. And then I went out as the agent and executed that. I didn't go into business for myself. We got the okay first. Then, just a few weeks later, I get a call from Terry Taylor announcing that my services are no longer required, along with Dutch's, along with Savio's, along with Road Dogg's, along with every other fucking enemy that he had. The only people that remained were Matt Conway, who was some stooge that had worked in production that Dixie put on the creative team because they wouldn't tell her what was going on, and so she wanted somebody to fucking spy for her. And Russo, and he was about to bring in Ed Ferrara, who I had told what I thought of him years ago and who wouldn't coexist with me, so he had to figure out a way to get me out of the way. So he cut my nuts off behind my back to Dixie and Terry Taylor, because Terry, my old friend, I never hated him. He flunked a stooge test when I sent an email to him about Russo, but he had no balls, and he was a Christian buddy of Russo's, and they rode in the car together. Have you ever noticed these Christian buddies? They don't mind lying behind people's backs. Terry Taylor took up for him and called me and said, fine, your services are no longer required. Then the next day, I read on the internet that it's announced in the Sun newspaper that I was fired for being unprofessional, for having a blow-up and in the production meeting and screaming, why are we pushing Eric Young? Which was nonsense and had to come from somebody in that room. And it was a preemptive strike by that piece of shit, lying sack of snake feces Vince Russo to make him look like the babyface. I had to do something wrong. And people would think, they would believe readily that I would scream at Vince Russo, even though I hadn't. So I asked Terry Taylor, my old bosom buddy, for a retraction since he knew that it didn't happen. And he said that he was sure that Dixie would have no problem with that. And the next day, there was a retraction. The same unnamed source that said I did it also said I didn't do it. Not from Dixie Carter, not from anybody that was attributable in the company, but an unnamed source. Which is why that I've been telling people what a lying sack of shit, whore, cunt, douchebag Dixie Carter's been ever since, because she lied to me to my face on the phone and told me it didn't have anything to do with Russo. It was just a difference in philosophy, and we'd work together sometime again down the road. Yeah, I'd want some more of that. It was so enjoyable the first time around. And I've also tried to tell everybody what Vince Russo's really like. But unfortunately, even though most everybody now knows, since he has had not one lick of success in the fucking wrestling industry since his accidental attitude era 20 years ago, he still perpetuates this myth that he could say suey if the hogs had him about professional wrestling. And the only one now that believes him is that fucking douchebag Dixie Carter, because even after they brought in Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff, by the way, how much success has TNA Wrestling had since the summer of 2009, after Jeff Jarrett left and I left and Dutch Mantell left? Things have pretty much gone downhill. They've had every big name from Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff on down, and their ratings have gotten worse, and their television networks have plummeted from Spike to fucking Destination America to fucking Pop TV. Their talent roster has been depleted. Her parents cut her off, Brian. Cut off her allowance, the little delicate southern flower, so she don't have the money to play wrestling promoter anymore. She's Ann Gunkel in the dying days of the Georgia War. So they bring in Bischoff and Hogan, who hate Vince Russo just as much as most everybody. There's been lawsuits between them before, and Russo loses his power, so he goes home. But he knew He knew that Bischoff and Hogan were just drying the fucking clueless twat out, hanging her up and draining her blood, and he knew that she would need something sooner or later. So he waited, and when finally she realized that she had been butt-fucked by Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff without even any lube, she started talking to Vince Russo again. And he became a consultant to her. But you see, here's the problem. See, he's so toxic, his presence is so poisonous, his reputation is so bad, and everybody who's ever worked with him, if they'll admit it publicly, knows what the fuck he's like, that she couldn't even bring him back in front of people. So he was a consultant in secret. And then you remember this, Brian. Who stooged on him? He did. He sent an email not to Mike Tenay telling him how to do some commentary, but to Mike Johnson of PW Insider, who they had denied and lied to, like they'd lied to everybody else, said, no, Vince Russo doesn't have anything to do with our company, and that proved it did, and Mike Johnson asked for a comment, and they lied to him again, and he got mad because they lied to him, so he printed it. And guess who else didn't want Vince Russo involved in the company? Spike TV, who already wasn't happy with the ratings that they weren't getting anymore from that half-ass outlaw program. And they had told the Spike TV representatives specifically when they asked, no, Vince Russo doesn't have anything to do with our company. So not only did they find out by reading the internet that a company that they had been helping to financially support, that they had been kicking in money for to pay the big contracts of all these